Are you ready?
Hello once again, folks. Mark Coleman here from the Riverbend Sports Network, and this is the Gridiron Report, a look at the top stories in Fredericksburg Regional High School football. This week our guest is Fredericksburg's freelance star, assistant sports editor Justin Rice. Justin, great to see you again.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me back.
Justin, how about we take a look at the games from this past week? Some big ones certainly were on the docket. None bigger than the game of the week, Riverbend hosting North Stafford.
Yeah, Riverbend, North Stafford, Riverbend just trying to prove itself against some of the better teams in the Commonwealth District. Came pretty close to doing just that, I think. They've got to walk away feeling like they played a great game.
I think so. I was at the game. Both teams played exceptionally well. Very, very clean, well-played game. One turnover was a Hail Mary at the end of the game. Only 4 penalties total. Very cleanly played. I think both teams should feel good about how it came out. Unfortunately for Riverbend, North Stafford came up on the high side of the scoreboard.
Yeah, and then, when you play a close game like that, it's going to come down to just one or two moments that are going to, seem like they make the difference. And, a tough loss, but not, the end of the world for Riverbend, certainly.
But there are some playoff implications. So North Stafford is firmly set into the playoffs. Riverbend, maybe not so much, though.
Yeah, North Stafford is going to be there one way or another, whether or not they're a home team or they're an away team or if they're a top seed or a second seed. But they're certainly going to be in the postseason. Riverbend, you look at their lead in the point standings, and it looks pretty safe right now. But then you consider what they have left. They still have Colonial Forge, they still have Mountain View, and they still have winless Stafford, a game you expect them to win, but Stafford doesn't give that many power points because of their record so far. And then the teams that are chasing Riverbend for those last couple spots in their half of the 6A South, those teams are sort of in a more winnable stretch of their season. I would say Riverbend needs to win 2 out of their last 3 games to be in the playoffs.
Hard to argue with the fact that you need to win to get into the playoffs, though. So there's not a whole lot of complaining that they should do.
No, and they've won, I think, the games on their schedule that you look at and say, this is a game we should win. Now you've got to look at Mountain View, call it a coin flip. Colonial Forge, I think probably you call it the Eagles as a favorite in that game. But you got to look at those and say, if we're a playoff team, we've got to find a way to win at least one of those 2 games.
Can't argue with that. Absolutely,
not at all.
Absolutely. Another big game in terms of playoff implications. Mountain View got their business done at this point. Mountain View making a strong push here.
Yeah, they've played such a tough schedule. They've sort of flown under the radar like that, but they're still a quality team with good offensive weapons. Collins and Gray and the quarterback. That's a team that's very, very dangerous when they get into the playoffs. The question for them at this point is, it seems like they're certain to be in the playoffs in the 5A North. Are they going to be at home? Or are they going to be on the road? They've still got a tough schedule to finish with. Riverbend, Colonial Forge. That's going to be tough for them. They need to win 2 out of their last 3 probably to be at home. The team the closest to them is Albemarle. Albemarle probably an underdog against Monticello this week, but then Louisa and Orange, 2 very winnable games for the Patriots. So if Mountain View can't finish strong, I'd say Albemarle probably jumps them, and Albemarle's at home and Mountain View's on the road when the playoffs start.
Another impressive performance for Cortland, getting business done against Caroline. After 2 tough games to open the season, they've now rolled off, I believe, 5 wins in a row.
Yeah, 5 straight for Cortland. They look really good, and the other sports night reporter and I were talking about the Cougars this year, and we really feel like this is one of the better Cortland teams that we've seen the last couple of years. And you look back now at their losses this year. They lost to Massaponax. There's certainly no shame in that. And they lost to what is a very good Riverbend team. The Cougars are in fine shape.
And both of those losses were pretty close games as well. I think they were tied or possibly even leading at halftime in both of those games. So they certainly have an impressive team this season.
Yeah, sure enough, for sure. And Caroline's another team, though, that they're scoring points, they're moving the ball. They're on the cusp of the playoffs. They're looking like the 16 seed right now in the 4A South. They got to find a way to win a game or 2, though. In their remaining schedule, they got to find 1 win, preferably 2. 2 wins, they're probably certainly in. 1 win, it becomes a little more chancy for them.
How's this for a bit of a surprise? King George is now 6-1 after 2 victories this week. A big victory, 37-7 over Spotsylvania. This King George team is for real.
Yeah, the single wing, I'm a big believer. I love to hear about it and see it run. it's just really tough to stop. It's an offense that teams don't see. And whereas when they were using it as their change of pace offense early in the season, it would be with almost a separate set of offensive players.
Right.
Now they're running it. They're incorporating Jordy Estes. They're incorporating Corey Henderson. And that it's just a really nice offense. And as long as they can avoid self-destructing, penalties, mistakes, poor snaps, things like that, it's something teams have to contend with.
Sort of an exotic offense and a tough defense, those typically are good recipes for deep runs into the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. They made a good adjustment in the JM game. JM went from sort of being able to throw the ball in the first half to King George came down on the slant, took that away, and JM had a harder time moving the ball against King George's secondary in the second half. And certainly against Spotsylvania, granted a depleted Spotsylvania team, King George controlled it the whole way. And, they did what a good team is supposed to do in a game they're supposed to win.
Right. Speaking of good teams that do what they need to do to win, Eastern View needed some trick plays at the end to pull off a victory over Fauquier, but they got it done.
Yeah, for Eastern View, it's all about not just winning at this point. They've done that. They've got to get these wins against the better teams on their schedule. Fauquier 3-4, but you're talking about an Eastern View team that's only played one team this season with a winning record. Hanley's 4-3. So in terms of points and positioning, they've got to beat these games. They've got to beat these teams where the team has wins to give Eastern View more power points.
Right.
The Kettle Run game coming up is huge. Culpeper, Liberty this week. The Cyclones need to keep winning to stay in the top part of the 4A North. They probably can't get to the very top.
But certainly well entrenched into a playoff spot.
I think certainly at this point,
it's been a successful season thus far. The question is just how successful is it going to be?
Sure enough, yeah.
Speaking of JM, they also had a 2-game week this week after having to play King George on Monday. A bit disappointing loss at the hands of the Foxes, but they bounced back nicely and take care of business against Chancellor.
Well, not only did they bounce back against King George, the offense looked sort of up and down when the deep ball wasn't there. The running game was sort of sporadic. They bounced back and played really well offensively against Chancellor. And I think that's probably what Coach Survey wanted to see at this point, that our offense is dangerous. We have weapons. We can move the ball. And that's exactly what they did against Chancellor on Friday.
And they look strong in the 3A East.
Yeah, very strong. They can't really improve themselves too much more than where they are now. But even losses to Mountain View and North Stafford early in the season, those keep paying off. North Stafford, Mountain View keep winning games. Those score more points.
The losses that keep on giving.
Yes, exactly. That's precisely right. Essex, I don't know that Essex is going to lose again. That's going to be a game that keeps paying off for JM. And, of course, they're going to continue to win games. Certainly more tests to come up for them with Cortland looming large.
Finally, Washington Lee with a big 37-0 victory over Northumberland. They look like they're going to be able to possibly compete for a home playoff game in the 1A East.
Yeah, the Eagles have won 3 straight: Spotsylvania, Lancaster, Northumberland. They are 9th right now in the 1A East, and they certainly have the points in their reach to make that jump to be in the top 8. It's just going to be a matter of beating some quality teams. Rappahannock, Essex, Colonial Beach. You win those games, 2 of those games, you're probably up into the 8 and you're at home in the first week of the playoffs.
So some great performances individually this week as well. A big bounce-back game for quarterback Jay Scroggins of James Monroe. Earned them the victory and earned him the Freelance Star Player of the Week honors. A big turnaround from the Monday game.
Yeah, to go from the Monday game where he wasn't bad, but he was just sort of there, to the Friday game where he has a career day, 353 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, ran for another score. That's everything that JM hopes Jay Scroggins can be. Just dynamic and getting the ball out quick and finding his talented receivers.
2 talented receivers that he certainly targeted this past week. Cordell Boyd with 4 receptions, 138 yards, and 2 touchdown receptions. And Jarmo Bevels, 6 receptions, 124 yards, and 2 more touchdowns.
James Monroe, never short of weapons.
Never short of weapons.
Never short of weapons.
They've got the talent, no doubt.
Certainly.
There. Speaking of talent, Gordon Collins, workmanlike performance, 137 yards rushing, another touchdown for Mountain View. The kid, he's a contributor. Is that what you called him?
A compiler.
A compiler.
Gordon, he hasn't had a huge game or a big Friday, but he just continues to every week 100 yards, 120 yards, and when you string 10 of those together, you've had a great season.
Yeah.
He's just a guy that Mountain View can really count on, and this week was no different. 137 yards, 20 carries, and a touchdown. That's a great performance.
How's this for a kid that you can count on? Von Purvis, running back for North Stafford. It almost felt like a down week for him in terms of the stats, the number stuffing. He put 119 yards rushing on 23 carries, 2 touchdowns running the ball, 2 more catches for 27 yards and another touchdown, an electrifying touchdown. Honestly, he must have broken about 4 or 5 tackles on that. This kid is something special to watch.
Yeah, when we're talking about 119 yards as a week where he was quiet, I think that says all about Von Purvis this season. You need to know.
Yeah. And then the amazing offense that is Cortland. You just never know who's going to put up the numbers. This past week it was Anton Jenkins, 3 touchdowns rushing, nearly 100 yards, ended up with 94 yards carrying the ball.
Yeah, they're going to distribute it to a lot of guys, and every week somebody's going to get the touches and get the yards and get the touchdowns as long as they're winning and rolling. And this week it was Anton's week.
So this week we've got some great games coming up. The playoffs loom, and the games get that much bigger. James Monroe is going to be visiting Caroline, 2 teams, Caroline especially, that needs to find a victory. JM certainly wants to be able to continue that role if they're going to be able to host a playoff game.
Yeah, if JM is the team they think they're pretty solid, these are the games you're supposed to win. It's the team you're probably favored over on paper. But you can't underestimate Caroline. Rashard Harris is a quarterback that's just putting up huge numbers offensively. If the JM offense isn't going up and down the field, maybe the Caroline offense is. And that could put JM in a bad spot. So Jacket's going to try to hold serve. Caroline in desperate need of a win for sure.
Finally, we have perhaps the game of the year, at least for the regular season. How about this? People have had this game circled on their schedule probably since before the season started. North Stafford and Massaponax. This one's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, you're talking about 2 of the best teams in the Commonwealth District. Colonial Forge probably disagrees.
Probably.
But, these 2 teams have been right there neck and neck in the Freelance Stars Power Poll, and we expect it to be neck and neck on Friday for certain.
Massaponax remains undefeated, and they've just been able to sort of sneak through, it seems like, some of these games. But this is a really powerful team.
Yeah, I think they've gotten better and better as the season's gone along, which is really strange when you talk about all the injuries they've had to deal with and the folks they've had to replace, along their offensive line, especially along their defensive line. But they just keep piecing guys in, and they've looked better and better and better every week.
The game's at Massaponax. Do you think that gives them any kind of a benefit?
I tend to disregard that when you're talking about a short drive, and there's not an overwhelming hostile crowd or anything like that. I think it's just going to be probably a good, hard-nosed football game for sure.
Likely that they may meet each other again in the playoffs as well. That would be exciting.
Yeah, this one doesn't settle too much. They're both going to be in the playoffs. I think the winner is probably the higher-rated team, somewhere in the top 4 in the 5A North. Excuse me. If Massaponax wins, they got a real strong case to be the number 1 seed home throughout the playoffs, at least till we get to the state level. If North Stafford wins, probably can't catch Tuscarora or Briarwoods as the 1 seed, but they're going to get up there for sure and be in the top 2, top 3.
Right. And Briarwoods and Tuscarora will be playing each other this week as well.
This Friday as well. So one of those teams is going to lose and fall back as well. It's just a huge week in the 5A North for that top and sort of figuring those guys out.
A perfect storm almost.
Yeah, for sure.
That'll do it for this week's installment of the Gridiron Report. Thanks again to Justin for joining us this week. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Reminder that you can keep up with all of the latest in local high school sports by logging on to flsvarsity.com and by following them on Twitter at flsvarsity. Hope that you enjoy another great Friday of high school football. And join us again next week for our next edition of the Gridiron Report. For the Riverbend Sports Network, I'm Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.